Let's open our Bibles today to Matthew chapter 5. And we were off, well, we had kind of a year review and then Christmas Eve, so really the last time I think we were in here is the middle of December. So let me remind you just a little bit about what we're doing. We are kind of doing a follow-up to the series of God's plan for salvation. The idea being this: we're saved by God, from God, and we talk about that a lot in God's plan for salvation. That's really what the kind of the core of that is. But I'm also saved for God. What's that start to look like? How does this begin to affect my life? We started in Matthew chapter 5, and we said this will kind of be our anchor section for that, especially verses 13 through 16. And we looked at that. Then the second week, we talked about Isaiah 6, and we said there's our picture. In Isaiah chapter 6, verses 1 through 7, I'm saved by God, from God. We see that. Isaiah sees God, woe to me, God comes, he delivers him. And then in verse 8 of Isaiah 6, God says, look, we got a lot, I'm paraphrasing here, we got a lot of work to do, a lot of stuff to happen. I need to get a group together. I need to send somebody. Who should I send? And Isaiah says, here I am, send me. I'm ready to go. Now, there's a wonderful subpoint there. You aren't really ready for service in the kingdom until you are saved by God, from God. One of the things, and this may sound like a no-brainer to you, but let me tell you, in the church world it isn't. In Gary's ministry, worship arts ministry, most churches, and I use that term most, I'm trying to think it through, I think it's right. Most churches have no problem hiring pagan musicians or taking somebody who's an amazing musician or vocalist and saying, all right, we're going to put you up there because we really need you because you're really good. Gary doesn't do that. Gary won't do that. Gary's thought process is, you're a leading worshiper. You can't be a leading worshiper if you don't know who Christ is, if you're not saved by God, from God. It makes obvious sense, doesn't it? But I'm just telling you, that's not the norm. So often when you'll see people who are tired of church stuff or church work or church stuff or don't like organized religion, all that kind of stuff, often it's because they've never been saved by God, from God. They're down there trying to do church or be religious or save themselves, but they're running on their own juice. They're running on their own power. So it's only as good as long as they're committed to it. But in Isaiah 6, now I've been saved by God, from God. Now there's work to do. Who should I send? Send me, because now I'm ready to go. And that should be our norm. That should be in our life now a service life. Just as Jesus didn't come to be served but to serve, you come not to be served but to serve. So let me just show you how this begins to affect the whole way you think. And I don't mean this, and I'm not trying to manipulate you at all. I'm trying to help you see this. So that when you look around and you see the rooms crowded at 10:30, your mind should immediately go, wait a minute, I'm flexible. Now, some of you I know have to be here because you serve at 8:30, but you're saying, I have flexibility here. Why don't I go at 8:30, though it may be a little more inconvenient for me, so that it seems God's working at 10:30. That's how he seems to work. He's working at 10:30. Why don't I open up some chairs there? Okay? And then at the same time, I'm reaching into my wallet to give money to build a bigger building. That's not natural. But that's how God begins to work in a life. Start to think those things. So he said, here's the key verse in this whole series, Matthew chapter 5, verse 16. Let your light shine before men in such a way that they see your good works and glorify your Father who's in heaven. So that's how we got here. Week 1, we looked at verses 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Those 4 verses. One of the commentators writes this: in these 4 verses, you're the salt of the earth, the light of the world, let your light shine. In those 4 verses, they summarize the function of believers in the world. Reduced to one word, that function is influence. Whoever lives according to the Beatitudes is going to function in the world as salt and light. Christian character, consciously or unconsciously, affects the other people around you, for better or for worse. As John Donne reminds us, no man is an island. We are now kingdom citizens. We are now thinking about something other than ourselves. We are now pulled into these relationships. the relationship with other believers, the relationship with the lost world. We're here to be influence. Now, Jesus is teaching here, Matthew 5, it's the Sermon on the Mount. He arrives, disciples are there, he sits, he begins to teach, he shares the Beatitudes, and then verse 13, you're the salt of the earth. And we talked, last time we were together, we talked about salt. What does it do? Well, it creates thirst. It creates flavor. Someone has said, we Christians have no business being boring. Our function is to add flavor and excitement to the world. So that there should be something in you that's attractive. There should be something in you that's stimulating to the people around you. There should be something that when they see you, they kind of want what you got. Right? What he's saying is your life begins to change. There's flavor. He said salt is an irritant, salt in the wound. That's why we are here in that old cliche to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comforted. We're here to provide a little irritation. But likely, the main characteristic here is that of preservative. As God's children, John MacArthur writes, in his temples of the Holy Spirit, Christians represent God's presence in the earth. We're salt that prevents the entire earth from degenerating even faster than it is. That's who we are. We're salt, influence. Then he says, verse 14, you're the light of the world. Now, Jesus said in John chapter 9, verse 5, as long as I'm in the world, I'm the light of the world. Now I'm gone, you're the light of the world. And we said light does some things. It reveals. It's a measurement. It gives life. It reveals. It allows us to see things as they really are. We as Christians are the only people in this world who can see things as they really are because we see them through God's eyes, not through man's eyes. We begin to see things very differently. I was at a funeral Thursday, and it was a wonderful funeral I don't know the lady. It was John and Mary Neiman. Some of you may know them from Grace Community Church. I didn't know Mary very well. I know John pretty well. And Mary had cancer, and she's had it for about 1.5 years, and she died. She was in hospice 26 hours. She just really died a wonderful death. Christmas Eve went to church, went home, went out and drove out to Community Church of Joy to look at the lights. Got up Christmas Day, had their family breakfast, took a nap, went to see Dreamgirls with the family, came home, didn't feel well, went into hospice, and then died. Okay? So I don't know. God has his own plan for everyone, and that sounds like a pretty good one, except it's a long drive to Community Church of Joy. But there's a lot of lights right here, but you get the drift. Scott Jones, who's the pastor at Grace Community Church, did the memorial service, and some of you may be visiting from Grace, or you have friends at Grace. I hear that all the church people talk to one another and compare notes of, how much weight has Tom gained, how long's his hair, all that stuff. What's Scott doing? What's Cal Jernigan doing? That kind of stuff. If you get to pass the word, you pass the word that Scott did a wonderful memorial service. So let's edify him, encourage him in that. And he said 1,000 times, okay, that's hyperbole, that Mary's in heaven. He just said Mary's in heaven. And I was thinking about the person who's there, who's hearing that, maybe not with our grid, and maybe even like you are right now going, how does he know that? How does he understand that? Well, because we're the light of the world, we are to take God's revealed word. God revealed himself in this word. He reveals himself to us, and we become that to the world. So that when you go into the office, or you go to the gym, or you go to the campus, or you're shopping, or you're playing golf, or you're going for a walk, or you're doing whatever it is you're doing, the people around you who have some regular contact with you are saying this: you're different. Has anybody, and it's really important for me to ask this, have any unbelievers said that to you recently? Let me say it another way. When's the last time an unbeliever did say that to you? Because that should be a regular occurrence in your life. You should be hearing that from unbelievers. So they look at you, if you're married, they look at your marriage and they go, how your marriage is different. How come you work so well? How does that work? If you're here you go. If you're dating, okay, you should be hearing from an unbeliever, you're a different kind of date. You're different than most girls. You're different than most guys. You seem to have a different mindset, a different agenda. If there's a boss that comes in, he ought to look at you and say, you're a different kind of employee. Or you ought to be looking at employees and saying that you're different. There's something different about you. Not odd, different. Huh? Some of you have both covered, but different. They're different. Why? Because you see things as they really are. You understand what's really important. You understand what really matters. I watched a ton of the Gerald Ford funeral on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday. It just seemed like it went on. And they kept saying, this is a good man. This is a decent man. This is a man with all these values. This is a man. And I'm thinking, you know what? We ought to be reminded of that every day. That stands out when people see it. Especially, I assume, if you're in Washington. Because there probably aren't a lot of good and decent and all that goes with it. I don't know that. That's who we are. We're life givers. We have the message of life. We have the message of hope to the world. It's the message of Jesus Christ. So looking at these 4 verses, G. Campbell Morgan summarizes them this way. The world needs salt because it's corrupt, and it needs light because it's dark. Jesus, looking over the multitudes of his day, saw the corruption, saw the disintegration of life at every point, its breakup, and because of his love for the multitudes, Jesus knew the thing they needed most was salt in order that the corruption should be arrested. And he saw them wrapped in gloom, sitting in darkness, groping in the mist and fog, and he knew that they needed, the world now, above everything else, they needed life. They needed salt and light. This is what you are. So you go, you take that to the world. That's what you are. Verse 16. Now, verse 16 is the thing that began this whole series. This whole thing started last summer for me. Messing around with verse 16. Reading it through, going through some old notes that I'd made years ago, had obviously made them. That's my handwriting, though I don't remember ever having these thoughts. And going through them and going through maybe in a different way or a different side. But here it is. Let your light, verse 16, Matthew 5, let your light shine before men in such a way that they may see your good works and glorify your fathers in heaven. Now, a couple weeks ago, I challenged you. I won't ask how many because it would be discouraging. I challenged you to take the verse and write it out on a card and to keep it with you. On the other side of the card or somewhere in a book, I don't care how you do it, start to make observations about this verse. What do you see? What does God begin to show you? What are the things that pop off the page at you? And that's a wonderful way to take verses like these that really lend themselves pretty easily to this and start to let God begin to teach you. Start to begin to think about it. So let me just show you how I would approach something like this. And this is not an in-depth, this is real quick. So I would take verse 16 and I read this. Let your light shine before men in such a way that they may see your good works, comma, and glorify your fathers in heaven. For me, okay, when I look at it, the verse kind of breaks into 2 parts. See that? Let your light shine before men in such a way that they may see your good works, part 1. Part 2, then they glorify your fathers in heaven. So as I begin to look at this, what I see is that there's this command, let your light shine, do this, let this light shine. What does that mean? Be salt and light. Okay? Begin to see this. It means that they're to be, do you see that? Seen. They're supposed to see your good works. There's something visibly, distinctively different about you. That's what he's saying. That my life is to be visibly different. All those things we talked about. Everything should be different. And it should stand out in a world that's really lost. Here you go. Most of the people that I know are getting more and more pessimistic about the world. Okay? Don't you find that? More and more people talking to us, the world's getting darker. And it's getting a little darker, and it's getting a little darker. So welcome over to my world now. So now we're over here and the world's dark. The darker it is, the less light it takes to make a difference or to shine. If I had a cigarette lighter right now and I lit that cigarette lighter, boom, and the lights the way they are in here, it would have almost no effect. But if we took the lights down and I lit that, it would have a significant impact around. If the world's getting darker, the good news is it takes less and less light to shine to make a difference. Okay? Now, that's your call. That's visible. You see what he says? That's visible. That first part of that verse says there's something here that's action. there's these things called good works. And they're supposed to see them, which means I've got to have unbelievers engaged in my life. They have to be there, right? If I'm going to have salt, I'm going to have light, there has to be contact. If they're going to see my good works and glorify my Father who's in heaven, that see him, there has to be proximity. For them to be proximity, there has to be some level of relationship. Whether it's work or school or neighborhood or the club or whatever, homeowners association, they don't always see Christ-likeness there. But you get the drift of what we're talking about. So that's what that first part of that verse says to me. The second part of the verse says that there's a reaction. There's an action, I'm having these good works, a reaction, and that is they glorify the Father who's in heaven. Now, I began last summer just thinking about that, which doesn't sound like we don't value that much anymore, do we, thinking? And let me show you how you can prove that. Go to the office tomorrow, go into your cube, and sit down. Get a cup. Let me go back over. One of my most frequently asked questions is, what is in this cup? Okay? And it's hot, really hot water, as hot as I can get it, and throat lozenges, just to kind of keep it, and a little scotch. Teasing about the scotch. Don't write that down. But it's hot water, as hot as I can get it, and throat lozenges, because the day's long. So you're in the office. Get in there a little early. Get down in your office or your cube. Get comfortable. Don't turn on any music. Get something to drink. And just start thinking. A little drink to stimulate it. And what's going to happen is this. Somebody's going to walk by and go, what are you doing? Thinking. And they're going to run down and go, you're not going to believe this. He's down there thinking. We got a guy thinking. And pretty soon the boss is going to hear this, and he or she is going to come down and say to you, hey, we don't what? We don't pay you to think. Okay? Which would be why the thing is as screwed up as it is, but there we go. See, it's a very rare thing. So I spent a whole bunch of time thinking about this verse, and I didn't really think any more in terms of notes, much more than what we had there. But then I referred back to something we had before, is that God's called us to be salt and light in this world, and it's a two-step process. Let me see if this imagery catches. We make the invisible God visible, and then we speak the truth boldly. See that connection? We make the invisible God visible. Let them see your good works. And then we speak the truth boldly. Now, there's no way they're going to know to glorify your Father who's in heaven unless you tell them. They're not going to figure that out naturally. And these things are inseparable. These two things in your life, you cannot separate them. If you do, you got problems. If you make the invisible God visible but do not speak the truth boldly, you're a coward. If you speak the truth boldly but do not make the invisible God visible, you're a hypocrite. Neither one is good. So here's what God's saying to us through his word, is that there's something different and unique about you. You're salt and you're earth and you're light. You're here to influence, and you do it through good works. And you want them to see those good works, and then glorify your Father who's in heaven. Now, we're doing a lot of thinking today. You need a rest? Are we all right? All right. There we go. When you think about good works, don't answer out loud now. What do you think about? So he says, let your light shine before men in such a way, so my light shining, what is that light? That they'd see my good works. Okay. Now, what do you begin to think about? I made a list. Here are the things I think about. I think about the spiritual disciplines. So it would be things like fasting and studying God's word, and praying, serving, giving, worship, fellowship. When you get into spiritual disciplines, you would have added to it things like solitude and silence. Probably didn't, maybe not hit your list. Evangelism. So it would be that list. Now, you can add to it, but anybody's list is going to have those on them. When I hear good works, I think about doing these things. When I hear good works, I think doing, action, Good works, do. Don't know what yet, just do. Do what? Do something just exactly like it's the most natural reaction in the world. Peter preaches this powerful sermon in Acts chapter 2. It says in verse 37 that the people are pierced to their heart, and the first thing they say is, what should we do? That's my natural reaction. So when I hear good works, I would go right to do. Here's the problem. I want to get there, but I want us to go a little slower. I told you 2 weeks ago, there's a real key here in verse 13 and 14 in the first two words. Look at them again. You are. 3 observations. Number 1, if we were to read it the way it was written, it would be read like this. You are the salt of the earth. You. That's the emphasis is on the you. And see, this could be discouraging, but let's try it. And remember the second thing? What is it about that you that's a little different than we might see in there? It's plural. So he's speaking to, if we go back, see how this stuff works? And this is, you got to admit, this is fun. I mean, honestly, this has to be fun, isn't it? I mean, isn't that fun? I mean, isn't it? Whatever. Go back to chapter 5, verse 1. Jesus saw the crowds. He went up on the mountain. He sat down. His disciples came to him. He opened his mouth, and he began to teach them. So he's teaching them in the plural setting, you, but I think it's very fair for us to apply it corporately to us, East Valley Bible Church. East Valley Bible Church should be salt and light. Should be something different. When you walk on campus here, there should be something that says this is different. This is different than any other. I got an email this week from somebody, and they're just saying, I know you're really busy. I heard about your wife. I'm sure you don't have time to respond. Give this to somebody else on the staff. And I thought, those are the ones I respond to because you get like extra points for that. So but they said, I've come to the church. I'm new to the church. I haven't been around for a while. I don't want a church like my father's church. I don't want a dead, dry, deary church, all that kind of stuff. And I just, and we're concerned about our kids. We have a kid in 6th grade, a kid in 2nd grade, I think it was, or something like that. And so I emailed back and I said, the kids will be thrilled, and I think you'll find it very different. You should sense that just walking on campus. Here's my home number. Give me a call if you want to talk about the church. I'll be happy to talk about it. But you see what I'm saying? Every day is somebody's first day on campus, and they should see a difference. You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. You are. The word, or the phrase you are, is not a command. Don't read that as a command. Obviously, there's a command part to it, but that's not how he's saying it. He's saying here, this is what you are. This is not what you do. This is what, you are the salt of the earth. You are my representative. You are the light of the world. You may be lousy salt. You may be terrible light, but that's what you are. That's what he's saying now. He's saying this is about being, not about doing. So as I'm breaking this apart, now I'm giving you I've been thinking about this about a month at this point. So after I've been thinking about this a month, I'm going, okay, I want to get to the doing, but he's saying you got to be first. So I thought I would do something just a little bit different here as we talk about good works. Because I want to talk about evangelism, I want to talk about some of those things. But I thought before I did, I'd talk more about the motive and more about the heart condition, more about the person you really are. Okay? So let's do that. You're in Matthew's gospel. I want you to go to the right through the balance of the gospels and the book of Acts and Romans and 1st and 2nd Corinthians and stop at the book of Galatians. Paul's writing to this church or this body of believers. We're not necessarily clear exactly. Certainly to the churches in this region of Galatia. He says in verse 1 of chapter 1, Paul, an apostle. So whenever he uses that, it's not that he's pulling rank, but he's pretty much saying, okay, there's some teaching that needs to be done here. And he begins in verse 6 of chapter 1 saying, I am amazed at you. Now, if that's all you read, you get kind of excited, but that's not what he means. I'm amazed at you that you so quickly are deserting him who called you by the grace of God for a different gospel. I'm amazed at you. I'm amazed that you can hear about and experience and see the grace of God and so quickly turn away to a different gospel. And the gospel was a gospel of works. It was a gospel that wasn't just free grace, though there was grace involved, but it said, you'll do this, you'll do this, you'll do this. There'll be these things that'll come along. Now, will there be life-changing good works? Sure there will. But it's a result of something. It doesn't result in my salvation, okay? Look at chapter 5, verse 4. It's the same thought process. Okay, I'm amazed at you. You walked away from this gospel. Kind of hurts me. This is disappointing. You've been severed from Christ. Who? You who are seeking to be justified by the law. You've fallen from grace. You've turned away from grace. You're seeking to please God on your own. They were doing a bunch of stuff. So if you looked on the outside, you might even get excited about them and say, look at them. One of the things that they were imposing on these guys, the Judaizers had come and said, if you want to be a Christian, you need to be a Jew too. So you had guys, to me, this represents some level of commitment. So you had guys at 25, 6, 7, 8, 30 getting circumcised. That's a tough sell. You got a lot of stuff going on here that's got a lot going in, that's saying there's a lot happening, but he's saying we got a problem here. You've given up the grace. Now it begins to reflect itself in their life. So here's where we want to land, verse 16. But I say to you, okay, there's all this that's going on, you got all this happening. I say to you, walk by the Spirit. Said another way would be led by the Spirit. The word walk is in the present tense. It speaks of a continuous, regular, ongoing, habitual way of life. Live this way. Walk by the Spirit, and you'll not carry out the desires of the flesh. Now, he doesn't necessarily at that point just mean the physical body. He means all that's coming together with this, the mind, the heart, the desire, the emotions, the old you. It says, I want my thing, not your thing, all that. I want you to walk and be led by the Spirit, not by the flesh. The flesh sets its desire against the Spirit against the flesh. Look at verse 17. They're in opposition to one another. So here's that struggle. It's the struggle that Paul talks about when he said, I don't do the things I want to do, I do the things I don't want to do. I got this struggle. I would think that to some level this represents you, doesn't it? I want to be able to sing, You're All I Need. That'd be cool to sing that. But I got a really hard time singing that. Because I want to sing it like this. You're all I need most of the time. However, there are those moments more than I'd like where I find myself feeling like I need that as well. The problem with singing that is you all get ahead of me in the song. I can't catch up. But that's how do you feel that? You should. I mean, you're all I need. Okay, I got that. But I don't always do that. I know I should. How often have you said, I know I should, but I don't? Why? Because there's this huge struggle in your life. Because the Spirit of God is in if you're a Christian, there's a Spirit of God in your life, and yet there is this world around you and these desires, and they're at war with one another. But to be led by the Spirit, to walk in the Spirit, is the desire. Now, when he talks about walking in the Spirit, he talks about, so if I say Galatians 5, to many of you it's brand new, but to those who have been around, you immediately go, verse 22, the fruit of the Spirit. But before he does that, he gives you, look at this, the fruit of the flesh. Now, the deeds of the flesh are evident. You can't miss them. They're evident. They're obvious. Here's what they are. There's immorality. We'll spend a second just on each one of them. The first kind of few talk about the area really of sex. Immorality, porneia, illicit sexual activity. What does that mean? Well, it means a whole bunch of things. If you're here, and I know we need to say it, even though it's a church, if you're here and you're married, and you're having sex with anyone other than your husband or your wife, that's sin. If you're here and you're single and you're having sex at all, that's sin. Well, that's when we then, what does sex mean? How do you define sex? Yeah? And some of you who are older and married go, well, that's obvious. And they're going, well, it isn't so obvious on this end because I'm single and I'm trying to figure this out. I want to know what the boundaries are. What are the boundaries? Real simple. Okay? anything, providing you have a normal relationship with your brother or sister, anything you do with your brother or sister, your mom or your dad. Oh, that narrowed that. Look, who? Listen to the minds around you slamming shut. Okay? We lost some people on that. But that's what it says. Okay? Or homosexuality. Any of those things. Those are all perversions. They're all of the same. Bestiality, they would be dealing a lot with that. So if I've got this going on, or sensuality, or impurity. Impurity was a medical term speaking of an oozing wound. Okay? So I got this oozing kind of dirty thing going on, unclean thing. Sensuality, any sort of excess. Unrestrained sexual indulgence, just kind of what you see around you. It feels good, do it, do whatever you want to do. Or idolatry and sorcery, couples those together. They're kind of part of religion. Idolatry is anything that's taken God's place, really, in your relationship. Sorcery, from that Greek word we get the English word pharmacy or pharmaceutical, it has to do with mind-altering drugs that would be a lot of part of their religion. Or enmity. These are all, and these are in plural again. Speaking a lot of, these are hateful attitudes. Enmity and jealousy and anger and outbursts of anger. Okay? If you're dealing with somebody and they've got these sudden, unrestrained expressions of anger, sometimes provocated, sometimes little provocation, sometimes all of a sudden they just explode, something like that. And then these go together, disputes, dissension, factions, and envy. What they are ongoing hostilities. Let me see if I can give you illustrations based on generation and timing. The Hatfields and the McCoys, the Cripps and the Bloods, Rosie and the Donald. Okay, so there you go. You're all up to speed. You get a sense of that. You just can't get it fixed. I personally like some of the Donald. It makes me laugh. I don't know why he's messing around with this other than maybe to promote The Apprentice tonight so you watch it. But it's like this thing just doesn't get shut down. Drunkenness and carousing, that would, again, and oftentimes be part of their religion, but general. And then he says, and all sorts of stuff like that. Now, if you're sitting here today and say, okay, I want to be led by the Spirit, not by the flesh. If you've got in there these things we just talked about, immorality, impurity, sensuality, idolatry, sorcery, enmity, strife, jealousy, outbursts of anger, disputes, dissension, faction, envy, drunkenness, carousing, things like these. You got those in there, he's saying you're being led by this flesh, not by the Spirit. Now, there should be something inside of you that's going, really? Because I get mad. And I get jealous. And then I get envious. And so you're sitting there going, what does that mean? What's he saying there? Do Christians never sin in these areas? No. Verse 19, okay? I forewarned you that those who, and here's the key word, practice. Again, it's the same idea of a continual habitual action. If this describes your life, if I ran into 5 people who knew you and said, describe how he's living or she's living, and this would be the general tone of their life, then what he's saying is, at this point, you aren't being led by the Spirit. You're walking in the flesh. You're living like every other pagan in the world. Verse 22, and this is what we're trying to get to. But the fruit of the Spirit is, and then he lays it out, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. So if you say, I want to demonstrate these good works, I'm going to say, what's the motive behind it? You're going to say, well, I want to be led by God. I want to walk with Him. I want to live Paul's language. I want to live and walk in a manner worthy of my calling. I want to be that. He would say, all right, then there should be in your life these things. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. So before we start talking about these doing things, I want to talk about the being part of this. What I find interesting, and I'll bet you do too, is that verse 22 says the fruit of the Spirit is, and then it lists 9 things. To be grammatically correct, we would say the fruits of the Spirit are these 9 things. Now, God is concerned about being absolutely correct. He doesn't have in His word an error or a mistake. So what's He saying to us? I think He's saying this. One of 2 things, and they're almost the same. Either one, the fruit of the Spirit is these 9 things clustered together. They're like a bunch of grapes. You grab the fruit of the Spirit, you get these 9 things clustered together. You can't just say, you know what? I got the Spirit in my life. Really prove it. I got, patience, kindness, and faithfulness. He's saying, no. It's not a smorgasbord. It's a bunch of these things. The fruit of the Spirit is grab it, and it's these 9 things. He's either saying that, which is a legitimate way, I think, of looking at it, or another way, which is essentially the same thing. The fruit of the Spirit is love, and then all these other words begin to define what love really is. They kind of all go together. And I'm comfortable with either one. It really doesn't make any difference to me. He talks kind of about my relation, my mindset with God, love, joy, peace, my relationship with others, patience, kindness, goodness, and then just general conduct, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. So what I want to do is just take a look at each one of these. My intention today, and I'm prepared to go all the way through the first one, but I didn't get very far, first hour. So we need to be sensitive to that. We got about 7 minutes left. If I said to you, I need some help here, I'm not really sure, I want to talk about love, you would say to me, well, Tom, if you're going to talk about love, you ought to turn to a passage of Scripture. What passage would that be? What would that be? 1 Corinthians 13. So you go left, okay? You go through 2 Corinthians, cleverly placed before that is 1 Corinthians, and the 13th chapter. And in Corinthians, 1 Corinthians chapter 13, Paul talks about love. He talks about the supremacy of love, first 3 verses, and a definition of love, verses 4, 5, 6, 7, and then the permanence of love in the balance of this chapter. If we're going to talk about love, let's make sure we understand what the Bible says about love first. First, he says it's not an option. John chapter 13, verse 34, Jesus said, "A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another, even as I have loved you, and that you also love one another." Verse 35, "By this all men will know that you are my disciple." So what would be the characteristic that Jesus would mention? By the way, this is John 13, right before, we're going to start in John 14 in a few weeks, right before that, right before he sits down in chapters 14, 15, 16, and 17, where he's talking to them about this is last night with them. Right before that, he says, they're going to know, the world's going to know, if you're my disciples, if they look at you and they see you loving on one another. They ought to see love. So he said, this love isn't optional, it's mandatory. It ought to be part of every Christian's life. It's something supernatural. It's the fruit of the Spirit. So it's generated by the Spirit, not by you or me. And it's essential to service. It becomes the motive for service. So do I periodically serve out of duty? Sure I do. But because I love God, I want to love Him. I want to manifest it, which means that sometimes I'm even going to do things I really don't particularly want to do, like go to the 8:30 service. Now, we want to define love. We have a definition here. Before we get there, I went online and I just Googled the word love. My suspicion would be I probably wouldn't want to go very far into that. I Googled it, and in like 0.2 something seconds, I got 17,215,250 entries. One of these is just a website, lovingyou.com. And it's just, apparently, any person can write in and talk about love or romance. And here's some of them. Here, observation. When it rains, look for the rainbow. To see that was one entry. Here's another one. To see unconditional love, look in the eyes of a child. Love is like a rose. The special ones grow in winter. I have not got the foggiest idea what that could mean. I have not a clue what that means. If I love you this much, I'm not the one for you, then the one for you will be everything I am and everything I'm not. Gee, why are you online? If you love someone, you should just say it loudly right when you feel it, or the moment will pass by. Which would be the very definition of emotion and infatuation, not love. Love is like a rhino. It's short-sighted and hasty. If it cannot find its way, it will make a way. Hate is the only love, and I'm reading exactly the way it's written. Hate is the only love that has missed its way. It's just absolutely stupid. This stuff is just stupid. Here you go, and I'm done. I could go. How about this? Okay. For a while I thought I would never love or hate anyone, but I've come to realize I love and hated the same person. Okay. Now, that's the internet. Let's get a little more sophisticated. Here's Webster. Okay. Webster says there's like 5 things with love. It's a tender affection for a person. I love you. It's a strong liking or interest for something. I love pizza. Okay. It's an object of affection such as a person, so it could be something. I love baseball. I love football. I love, Bill. I don't love Bill. I mean, you have to qualify this. I have a manly love for Bill. And then Webster designates 2 other areas of love. God's tender regard and concern for mankind, and mankind's devotion to or desire for God. His love for me, my love for him. Now, we can mess around with Webster, and we can Google love on the internet, but here, God defines love. So what we're going to do, take some time. Don't have a clue how long. I thought we'd do it today, so that gives you a clue that it didn't go the way I thought it. Okay, here you go. Look at verse 4, 5, 6, and 7. Love is. So here's his definition. And what he's going to do, Paul's going to list now 15 characteristics. 7 of them are stated in a positive sense. 8 of them are stated in a negative sense. So here you go. Now we'll kind of package them together in a second. Love is, I'm going to read it just as the text is. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not jealous. Love does not brag and is not arrogant. It does not act unbecomingly. It does not seek its own. It is not provoked. Does not take into account a wrong suffered. Verse 6, does not rejoice in unrighteousness, but rejoices with the truth. Verse 7, it bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. So part of what I want to do as I'm working through this is I want you to kind of see how I think so that you can do this too. So when I get that list, I immediately go, is not. So I just break it into 2 categories. So positively, here's what he says. Love is patient and kind. Love rejoices with truth, bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. That's what love is positively. On the negative side, here's what it doesn't do. It's not jealous. It doesn't brag. It's not arrogant. It's not unbecoming. It doesn't seek its own. It's not provoked. It's not taking into account a wrong suffered. It doesn't rejoice in unrighteousness. Now, here's the question. Do you have love? See, the whole objective here is not, because I don't want to go to the doing. I don't want to go to figure out if you're having your quiet time yet. I want to go to figure out whether you're studying your Bible and whether you're memorizing the Bible, whether you're sharing your, I want to go there. We're going to go there, need to be doing that, you got to figure it out. But here's the motive why. Because if I'm doing all those things and I don't have love, I'm a clanging cymbal, making a lot of racket, but it's not the real deal. The real deal has with it love. Okay? We're right on time, so give me just 30 seconds. Here's what he says first. Love is patient. It's active. It's not abstract. 1 John chapter 3, verse 18. Little children, let us not love with word or with tongue, but in deed and in action. Love is patient. This word, this Greek word, always describes patience with people, not with circumstance. So when it says love is patient, it doesn't mean when you're sitting behind a moron who won't turn right on red. It's not that patience, okay? License plate 453. Love is patient with people. Love understands that relationship, people, have inconvenience in them. And it accepts a level of inconvenience. It accepts the fact that it'll be taken advantage of. See, this is what he's calling you to. He's not calling you to some whimsical love is like a rose that blooms in the winter or some stupid thing, whatever that was. I don't even know what that means. That doesn't help me. That doesn't help me a lick. Not one of those things helped me a lick in dealing with Susan. Thinking that love with her is like a rhino isn't helping me a bit. Okay? I need to know love is patient. Love is patient, and it cuts both ways, but let's stay on she doesn't come to this service, so we'll stay on my side of this. Love is me putting up with her. Love is patient with her. That's not natural. Do you see how, and we're going to say this over and over again, and we got to go. God is love, so the illustration we're going to find over and over again for God is love is going to be in each one of these. I'm flipping the other night, Cool Hand Luke's on. I hadn't seen the movie in a long time. I love that old movie. And there's this scene where Paul Newman, Luke, is out there working on the chain gang. He begins to rain, lightning, thunder, and they're all going in, but Luke doesn't go in. And he's standing out. Remember the scene? He's standing out there and said, come on and get me. Come on and get me. If you're up there, come on. Lightning all around. Got his shovel. Come on. They're yelling, Luke, come on and get me. If you're up there, come and get me. Nothing happens. I don't know if you remember, he just goes. See, God's long-suffering, because what would have been very effective at that moment would have been, huh? And probably would have changed the whole environment on the chain gang as well. Now, I'm to be like that. All I want to do, as I say, I'm all messed up on my time today because I thought I'd get through this whole thing, is to whet your appetite to say, we're going here into something that's very different than just saying, here's what love is, now go study your Bible. We want to talk about that, and I want to get to let him glorify your fathers. I want to get to that, but I want to get to our whole motivation behind this. We are never going to read the Bible with the right mindset, pray with the right mindset, fast with the right mindset, share our faith with the right mindset, if we don't have love. If we don't love God, if we don't love His Word, if we don't love people, the rest of it's a waste of time. That's what He's saying to us. We're going to break that apart. We're going to hang in the fruit of the Spirit, and then we're going to move into this, how do you tell them? What does that look like? And interrupting us, there's a couple, Neil will be teaching, as I said, on the 28th. Super Bowl Sunday, we'll get the special times out for you on Super Bowl Sunday. We won't meet that afternoon. We've learned our lesson over the years in that. But that's where we're headed, and then we're back into the Gospel of John chapter 14, and whenever, the end of that. Okay? Let's pray. Father, help us live this way. And I love that prayer. Father, help us, because there's no way we're going to live this way. We don't think this way, behave this way, act this way. None of this is natural. If you don't do this in our life, it ain't going to happen. You provide us an example because, God, you're patient with us. Let us be real lovers, godly lovers, who are patient with people. And we pray that in Christ's name. Amen. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.